Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephanie, and I'm the Director of Events for the Novel Neighbor. If you are not familiar with us, we are a woman-owned and operated independent bookstore found in Webster Groves, Missouri, which is St. Louis, Missouri. And if you're in St. Louis, we kind of had like a fake snow day today. You can weigh in the comments about if you had a real snow day or not. And so and also Chicago had lots of snow. So we've moved this event virtually. We're so appreciative to all of you who were so flexible and adaptable as we were making those changes. But I truly could not think of a better way to have a snow day than talking about one of my favorite books of the year so far. I've seen so many of you reading and commenting and leaving reviews for it, so I know those of you watching also feel the same. But we're here tonight to celebrate The Favorites by Layne Fargo. I am absolutely obsessed with this book. Some of you know that as booksellers, we get to read books a little bit early. We get to read advanced reader copies, and I was lucky enough at the Novel Neighbor to be one of the first ones to read The Favorites, and I literally was just throwing it at like everybody else at the bookstore because I just needed somebody to talk to about this book because it was driving me up a wall because there's so much toxicity, there's so much tension, there's so much like chemistry and competitive sports, and I just absolutely loved it. So we are thrilled to welcome the author of this amazing novel, Layne Fargo, who has a background in theater, women's studies, and library science. So it's only fitting that she now writes deliciously dramatic, unapologetically feminist stories for a living. She's the author of the psychological thrillers They Never Learn and Temper, as well as co-author of the best-selling Young Rich Widow series, and her work has been translated into more than a dozen languages. Fargo lives in Chicago with her partner, their pets, maybe we'll get a little guest appearance, and an ever-expanding collection of books she definitely is going to read before she dies. So without any further ado, please welcome Layne. Hi.
Hello.
Um, Thank you so much for joining us. How's snowy Chicago?
I'm trying not to go outside too much. It's pretty bad here. My dog's very unhappy. He hates the snow, but I'm so sorry not to be there in person, especially since we already rescheduled this on another day when it was negative 35-degree wind chill. I just like Midwest winter. I don't know what to say. I was also joking that because no spoilers, but some like stuff goes down in St. Louis in this book, and I was like, did I curse myself? I really want to visit. But I've got my sparkly jacket on. I'm ready.
We're ready. We're gonna talk all things favorites. I know this has felt like a cursed event. It just I think that maybe between the two of us we cursed it because I also famously last September we were like meeting with some publishers in New York, and like one or two of them were like, what are Midwest winters like? Like, do you guys ever have issues with having to reschedule events because of snow? And I was like, to be honest, like no, like it's not happened in the past 3
It was
years. Like,
you. Yeah.
and I was like, this is, the first week of January, for those of you living in St. Louis, we had to like reschedule like 3 of our 7 events that were happening that week. And we were like, okay, it's also just 2025. I mean,
Yeah.
not been a stellar year yet so far, not
Yeah.
to,
5 2020s in a trench coat, people keep saying.
which is so accurate. Okay, but we have I'm so excited that all of you are able to tune in. So we have lots of excited people. Please know, guys, at any point in time, we will definitely have audience Q&A at the end, but I'm going to ask some questions up front. But if I ask a question and you would love to know, you're like, Stephanie, why aren't you asking that follow-up question? Just drop it in the comments and I will make sure that we get to it either in that moment or a little bit after. So be as interactive as y'all want. I see so many of you also agreeing that this was your first 5-star of the year. So the people love The Favorites. My first question for you is like, did you have any sense of how this book would be received? Because all I'm seeing as booksellers is people loving this book. I hope you're seeing that as well. Did you have any sense about who this book would be for?
Um, this is one of those books where I really wrote it for myself, which like I've seen this happen so many times with other authors too, when you just get kind of fed up and you're like, I'm doing this one for me, and then it ends up resonating more because you put so much into it. But this was a book, it came out of 2 failed projects that I sort of mashed together, lots of like existential crises during the pandemic, just I don't know. I spent the time writing it, loving it a lot myself, but being completely unsure if anyone else would like it or want it, or I kind of kept it close to the chest. Like I didn't share it with my agent until it was all written. I don't know. It was one of those ones where I just needed to be alone with it. And then it was, once we went on submission, the response was so positive. But even then you're like, it's publishing people, that's different than readers. So I've just never been sure, but it's amazing, especially for a book like this where I was like, maybe no one will want this. Maybe I'm the only weirdo who wants Ice Dance meets Wuthering Heights. And then to see so many people responding to it and enjoying it is just incredible. And also kind of gives me that like Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts feeling of like, I was right all along, you know?
Oh my gosh, people are already commenting that they want more. So, no, sorry, you can go with that. I know a lot of people that are watching have already read the book or are familiar with it, and that's some of what they're tuning in. But because this is streaming on Facebook and YouTube, in the event that somebody has come across this page and doesn't exactly know what the favorites is about, can you give us like the elevator pitch of what they're getting into?
Yeah, so it is a modern retelling of Wuthering Heights set in the world of Olympic ice dance. It follows Kat and Heath, who are childhood sweethearts turned Olympic hopefuls over the course of their very scandalous, dramatic career. Lots of breakups and makeups and losses and wins. And yeah, it's a lot.
It's just the right amount of all of the things. I want to talk about the Wuthering Heights part first for a second, because I feel that, like, kind of famously, Wuthering Heights is a little difficult to adapt. Like, a lot of, like, even, not even just books, like, in other capacities, it's kind of like one of those that has never, of quote unquote classics, has a hard time finding people who like love the adaptation. So like what do you love about Wuthering Heights, and like what inspired you to kind of use that as some of the backbone of the story that you were going to tell?
It's just so extreme, like their emotions, their like passion for each other, the love and the hate, and the atmosphere of the moors, and the weather as a character in this book. Basically, I mean, I became very obsessed with it as a teenage girl, which is the perfect time to read Wuthering Heights. I think I kind of imprinted on it. Yeah. I don't know what gave me the audacity to adapt it, because you're right, it's sort of a hard one to adapt because it's also very polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
People love it or they hate it, but I found that some people that hate Wuthering Heights still love this book, including my literary agent, big Wuthering Heights hater, but enjoyed this book. So I kind of tried to take the things I loved about it, but put it in a new context that could feel fresh for people, even if they don't like Kathy and Heathcliff and kind of can't stand all their dramatics. But I love them. They're just, I love a story that's about two terrible people who have found each other. That's yeah.
Yes. No, I love that too. And because I think somewhat a thing that as a reader I think that I really enjoy is like ultimately I love when I definitely feel that somebody has found their person. And to me, it doesn't really matter whether I find them likable or not, as long as like I can be invested in a love story of thinking that they're like the best for each other. And like
Yeah.
obviously we go through various points in this book of like whether they are the best for each other or like what their dynamic is going to be. But I do feel like there's also some interesting commentary happening in books and outside of books on unlikable characters, and I feel that particularly unlikable female characters tend to take the brunt of this conversation, where we're quite harsh in reviewing them. We don't understand their choices. They're too much this, they're not enough that. And so like were you thinking about that at all when you were crafting Kat as a character?
I used to, for 4 years, co-hosted a podcast called Unlikable Female Characters, where we talked about this at length. And what we discovered through that podcast was basically there's no way to be a likable woman. Like there just isn't. Like you can try to be so nice and so sweet and like someone will still hate you. Or I always use Taylor Swift as an example of this. Like there's a video going around today where she's at a Grammys after party, and she's giving generous cash tips to the like the people who are working at the party. And all these people in the comments are hating on her and being like, oh, she's just doing it for attention. She's so fake. She's so this. And I'm just like, there's literally nothing you can do to be likable. So screw it. So I don't even try, like, I wouldn't even know how to write a likable woman like in those terms. Like we're just all like, if you have an opinion, if you have desires, if you have ambition, someone is gonna judge you for it and hate you for it. So just go for what you want.
It's so frustrating because I saw those clips going around today, and like, not that they're exactly the same, but with the like Super Bowl of it all, like Josh Allen from the Bills just won MVP, and I was like getting all of I was getting fed content about Taylor, but then Josh Allen, who, like, this is not a commentary on whether he's good or bad, but like there's all these stories going around because his speech, he like started to name some people, and those people were like just like so excited and were just like, I love Josh. Like, they work within the organization, but they never thought that he like knew their name necessarily or like would say it on like stage. And it was just like such an interesting juxtaposition because I felt like he was getting lauded for like just saying people's name as part of a speech, and like Taylor is doing this, and I was just like, you can't win. Like, on top of like the booing video from the Super Bowl and just like all this stuff. I just yeah.
Well, speaking of the Super Bowl, there was that great Nike commercial with all the female athletes that was, you can't win, so win. Like, I loved that. That's so the spirit of Katarina Shaw and like this book in general. It's just like, you can't win, so just go for it.
That's the Jordan Childs ad, really.
Give her her medal back. I'm so mad at her.
I know. Are you also, I want to talk about ice skating next. Are you also like a gymnastics person? Like,
yes, I'm like an Olympics person.
Okay.
Like, I just love the Olympics. I don't care about sports except when the Olympics are on. And then I care about all the sports. I watch it obsessively. And gymnastics and skating are definitely my two favorites. But when the Olympics are on, I will watch anything. Like, I become, in 5 minutes, I'm like, I'm an expert on this sport now and I'm going to judge it.
Yeah, all of a sudden I was an expert in surfing this year, and I was like, I have no idea like what I couldn't tell you anything now, but for 2 weeks I really knew everything about the sport. So.
Yeah, it all goes away once the Olympics end because you got to free up that brain space, but absolutely.
Yeah. So that being said, ice skating, ice dancing, how did we get to that being, you know, this is like part Wuthering Heights, part all of these other things? How did those elements come together? Why did you decide that you wanted to put Kat and Heath in this context of this competitive sport?
It all goes back to 2018 and Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer. So I have had a lot of people ask me if the favorites is like fanfic about them, and it really isn't. Like, Kat and Heath are not very much like them at all. But I, like everyone else, became obsessed with them during the 2018 Winter Olympics and their incredible Moulin Rouge program. And even more so, I was fascinated by how feral everyone online went over it and like was desperate to know what their relationship was like off the ice and like kind of trying to dig up all this stuff about them. So that was interesting to me, thinking about like being on the other side of that. Like, they're athletes, they're trying to compete, they're trying to win, and there's all this noise and all this frenzy around them. And I also have a theater background, and it kind of feels like that, like you're playing a role. But it's this role that you're playing for decades, potentially, like especially ice dancers. I mean, one of the reasons I chose ice dance is because of Tessa and Scott, but also because that's a discipline where athletes tend to have longer careers. They peak more in their mid-20s. Some of the top ice dance teams today are in their mid-30s. So you have this longer span of time for, you know, drama and chaos, but also for them to get to know each other and have this really complicated relationship. Because there's nobody, like, no matter how much you love and respect each other in whatever way, like spending all of that time working so closely with someone in this high pressure situation, like there will be drama. It's a lot. It's like a marriage, but like even more extreme.
I think that was something that you just executed so well that I also felt like if you were not a Wuthering Heights fan, I think I could see why people understood this book more with that context, because it just felt like the stakes were so high. They're spending so much time together. This is not just about their relationship. This is also about like all of their goals and hopes and dreams. And so then I felt like the drama in that context maybe makes more sense to people than in like a different context, which is, I just think, like, part of how you executed this book, like, so beautifully.
Thank you.
Are you looking for, like, do you stay up to date on ice dancing and ice skating in between Olympic seasons? Like, is this something that you've been tracking now?
Since I started working on this book, yes.
Okay.
I started watching all the, like, nationals, worlds, the Grand Prix events. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to keep it up because, like, I need to write another book and, like, deep dive into something else now. I can't just be like all ice dance all the time, but I love it. It's so much fun to follow. And I think ice dance is fun to follow, especially because there are these teams that are around for a really long time. So you can watch them grow and root for them over a long period of time.
It's so interesting that you just say that you have to, like, be working on a different book, which reminded me that, like, oftentimes authors, when a book is, released into the world, you've been done with that project for a while and you're already moved on to, like, the next thing. Has this book being released into the world, like, pulled you back in? Like, have you had any trouble, like, separating your two projects?
Yes. This one, I mean, we sold it back in like mid 2023, so it's been a really long time. But I'm kind of obsessed with this book in a way that I haven't been with my other books, and it's a little hard to leave them behind, honestly. Like, I have been working on my next project, but I'm very happy to keep being pulled back towards Cat and Heath. My editor might not be as happy with me, but I'm very happy.
Editor's like, sure, they existed, they're done, move on. Something that I know has really stood out for people, and in how you told the story, is that it's a mix. There's a lot of mixed media involved. It's kind of documentary style. Um, what was that like for you to use that as a storytelling mechanism? Did you have any trouble keeping track of the timelines? Like, how
Yeah.
did you?
Yes. And well, maybe I shouldn't say it. No, I'll say it. I am working on, like, kind of a bonus thing right now that made me, like, go back. I can't say what it is. It's a secret, but, like, it had me, like, go back into the favorites and look up some things. And I found a timeline issue that no one caught. Like, I didn't catch it. My editors, copy editor, no one. So now it's a challenge to all of you if you can find this timeline issue. I might be able to, like, retcon it a little bit, but I was like, oh my God, how did this sneak past everyone? I had, like, all of these, I still do, like, all these interrelated databases of, like, the places that the competitions were happening. And because that's every single competition in this book, that's the real competition on the real day in the real city. If I could find the schedule for the event, it's the actual time that, like, the ice dance event took place. Like, that's all factual to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, I don't know. It was a lot to keep track of for sure, but I have a library background as well, and that made it a lot of fun. The documentary portions really allowed me to use a lot of my research and put a lot of extra things in there and explain some of the ins and outs of ice dance in a way that felt true to the world without having to have, like, an info dump, or have Kat kind of explain it in her narration in a way that seemed awkward. Because in a documentary, you do, like, they'll explain what terms mean or like, so it gave me a little cheat code for that. And it was just so much fun to have all of those different voices to play with, and to have all of the different perspectives on Cat and Heath, which also I took from Wuthering Heights, right? Like, because that story is not told by Kathy or Heathcliff, it's told by these other characters who are talking about them. You could say that whole book is just, like, Nellie Dean gossiping about Kathy and Heathcliff. That's what I would say.
I love that so much. I know. I was thinking about how I need to reread Wuthering Heights. Because I do feel like it's, like, a super gossipy book and underrated. And I was just like, I didn't have to read it in high school as required reading, but I think it would be really fun to do, like, especially now that I have, like, kind of multiple characters running around in my head of, like, I would love to just do that reread. But I'm also seeing people in the comments, and I think that I'm going to do this as well, who feel like challenge accepted, an excuse to reread to see if we can find the timeline mix up. So I really think you just gave us a gift, which is a reason to reread the book.
First person to DM me if they find the timeline issue on Instagram, maybe I'll send you a little prize or something.
So, oh, and what a great teaser that you're working on something a little special. So that's really exciting. Like gives us something. The only like qualm I have with your book is that I think there's a lot of books that are 5-star reads that I'm like, that was such a great book, so thrilled with it. But there is a certain tier of like a 5-star read where you, instead of it being like a slump buster, I feel that it's like a slump maker, where I'm just like, I don't know how I'm supposed to go read like a different piece of work. Like I'm just like, I want to be in this world. I can't get out of this world. You and I kind of joked about this in the green room, but I do feel like finishing this book, I had to go back and just like rewatch Challengers because it's like
Yeah,
the only thing that gives me that like same feeling.
that's a good way to deal with it. I'm always wanting to rewatch Challengers. Like literally any day, I may rewatch Challengers.
Do you have like a favorite seat in Challengers?
um, I mean, the scene in the hotel room with all three of them. I don't want to, if anyone hasn't seen it, because it's such a, like, you see it in the trailer and you think it's one thing. And then when she leans back on the bed with that little smile, I'm just like, oh, it's so good. So good.
Yeah, I know we won't spoil it for people, but if you have not seen Challengers yet, you have to go see it. I'm on a big like justice for Challengers getting like an Oscar nomination. Like I
Yeah.
think that score deserved
I know,
it.
not even for score. Like seriously, they won the Golden Globe. I'm a huge Trent Reznor fan from way back, so I am especially mad about that. That score is incredible.
Yeah, I was just like looking at some of the things that were nominated. I have some feelings. Okay, but nevertheless, back to the favorites. Nice little Challengers interlude. This is kind of a different book than what you've written before. When I was reading your bio, we talked about you've often strayed more towards like a psychological thriller. And so were you purposely switching genres a little bit? Did you know that was going to happen? Or like, how did we end up in this place?
Well, my first book, Temper, I didn't really know what it was when I wrote it. And I think it's a little bit more similar to the favorites in that it's like a lot of very unlikable people doing dramatic and unlikable things to each other. It's set backstage at a small Chicago theater company. And I didn't really know what it was. And then when I sold it, my publisher's like, it's a psychological thriller. And I'm like, okay. And I get reviews where people are like, this isn't a thriller. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Like, I don't know. And then with They Never Learn, I was intentionally trying to write a thriller. And even though I'm very proud of that book and a lot of people love it and I love seeing that, like I didn't have the best time writing it. I realized a lot of the thriller stuff that like people who are true thriller writers are so good at, and I know a lot of them, like the planning the crime and the forensic stuff and like all those ins and outs. I don't care about that. I just want to write about like messy relationships. So when I was trying to figure out what my third project would be, at first I did try to write a thriller. And in fact, I tried to write a thriller about ice dancers. It was like two rival ice dance teams with the same coach, and their coach ends up murdered and they're all suspects. And I wrote a whole draft of it and it was bad. I wasn't into it. Like it sounds like it could work, but it doesn't. At least it didn't when I'm always like, if somebody else wants to take that idea and run with it, by all
Here
means.
you go.
I'm putting that out into the universe. But I just felt kind of constrained by the thriller genre conventions because I just don't think it was like something I was trying to do to fit where I'd been placed in the market. So with the favorites, I just sort of did whatever I wanted, and now no one seems to know what genre it is. Like it's like book club fiction, but I've seen it on thriller lists, I've seen it on romance lists, I've seen it on literary fiction lists, which I'm like, it's definitely not that. I don't know. So it doesn't really matter if people are reading it and loving it. That's great, but I never know what genre I'm writing. I guess it's just whatever happens. But I think my next book is going to be pretty similar to the favorites in tone and scope and all of that.
I love this. I'm gonna have to like ponder like what. I mean, we have it shelved in fiction at the bookstore, but we like had a conversation about it because we were like seeing some different places where people were putting it online. But regardless, I think it's so well. Back to your point about thriller authors, I do feel like when we do interviews with thrillers authors, they're like amazing, and they talk about they like get so excited about all the dark things that they write. And I'm like, is that hard for you? Like, do you sit in office? And they're just like these super cheery people. And they're like, no, it's just great. I just go for like a walk and I'm doing fine. I'm like, you wrote a horrific crime though. Like that was
Yeah.
bad.
And that was getting to me, honestly, because They Never Learn is about a serial killer who kills rapists. So I had to, honestly, writing the murders was fine. I felt great about that. But like thinking about all the horrible things these men had done and all the horrible things men do in the real world and all that, it just was getting to me. And during the pandemic, I was already in a dark place, as I know we all were, and I just couldn't write something so dark anymore. I mean, there were a couple earlier versions of The Favorites where I intended to have a much darker ending, and I just like could not do it. It just didn't feel right ultimately. So I kind of, it's still messy, but I chose joy.
I was like, we won't do any spoilers, but that's hilarious to know that you almost had a darker ending because I feel that people already have some complaints about some
They do.
things. They're not, I don't really think that they're like real complaints. Like, I don't consider them because obviously they still love the book. You just make us go through some things.
Yeah, I think it's like partially sometimes the genre confusion thing too. Like if people are thinking this is a romance novel, there are certain things you don't do in a romance novel. Like I'm a huge romance fan. I read a ton of those books, and there are things that are just kind of like against the rules. And if I was writing it as a romance novel, I wouldn't have done these things, but I was thinking of it more as like general fiction or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I went to some places, and like if people aren't expecting that, then I've gotten some interesting emails. People very like, nobody being mean, but just like very invested, which is great. Like that's a compliment. But sometimes I just want to be like, they're fictional. It's okay.
It's okay. They're fine. I know. I do think this is probably a book where people are sometimes like, do you think they're doing okay now? And you're like,
Yeah,
probably. I think they're probably doing fine now. Like,
I think so.
I think it like worked out. That's what I chose to tell myself.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that you had a hard time writing They Never Learn because it's such a compelling book to read. And I really like trusted you where I was like, you would not do this to us if this was not going to be like satisfying in some way. But even as a reader, like it was so hard. Like try to read the book before bed and I'd just be like so amped up and I feel like you got to read something else before you're gonna fall asleep. You have to have something to bring the cortisol levels down. Like you're so revved up right now. So
Mhm.
but do you feel like previously writing thrillers lended itself to some of the pacing for this novel? Because
Mhm.
I feel that as a reader, one of the things that I love the most, like, there's so many twists and turns. I feel that this is so incredibly propulsive. Like you can never find a stopping point because you never know what's going to happen next. Is that something that you feel like came from that experience?
Yeah, I think so. I learned a lot writing thrillers and working with like my critique partners are thriller writers and learn a lot
Mhm.
from them. So I definitely tried to bring that sort of page turning, like the short chapters and little cliffhangers and lots of unexpected things. And I think that's just probably how I'll write forever because that's what I like to read, like something that is dramatic and pacey and um, that you can't, like, you're just like, one more page, one more page.
Yeah. Okay, I want to start preparing people because I know so many of you are watching. If you want to start dropping some questions in the comments, I want to make sure that we get to as many of them as we can. But I have a couple more things for us to get to first. One of which, the cover of this book,
Yes.
phenomenal. Did you have any say in the cover? What was your experience like as the author? Because sometimes I feel like authors get to have a say. Sometimes it's presented to them and they like love it and there's nothing else to be
Mhm.
said there.
I've had a lot of different experiences with covers so far in my career, but this one, they were very collaborative, showed me a lot of different versions. And then as soon as I saw that image, I was like, that's it. Absolutely. No question. Cause it's so sexy. But also she just looks so powerful like that. The woman in the photo, yeah. So as soon as I saw that, that was it for me. I was like, I will accept nothing else. But then we went through a lot of like, um, different, like they added the ice skate. There was a lot of back and forth about like how much sparkle to do. In the original picture, the guy is wearing like a white shirt and they added the sequins. So he's like in a costume as well. Like there's a lot of back and forth about those little details, which I love. Like I'm definitely a writer who has a lot of design opinions. And for this book, when I went on submission, I included with my submission this like pitch document that was designed kind of like with an aesthetic that's pretty similar to that book cover, actually. So like I had a Pinterest board, I had a playlist, I had all sorts of visuals and stuff for them to go off of. And I really appreciate that they took me seriously and were just like, go back to the keyboard, you know, like they were really, really collaborative and wanted my feedback on it. So it was a great experience. And I'm obsessed with the cover. As you can see, I have it giant behind me.
As you should. I mean, it takes my breath away. And I feel like it's just it so perfectly matches like what we're getting into, which is she's so powerful. Like there's so much tension between them, but I also like how she's kind of like in the pose, she's like kind of turning away from him, which is
Yeah.
also like, does she, love him or love the sport? Like, what are we like going
He's
for
just there to
here?
support her and lift her up.
Yeah. Exactly. Another thing that's been a standout for people, your audiobook, which has a cast of narrators. What can you tell us about the production of that?
So that as well, they let me pick from like a short list for each of the characters, which is so fun to think about like what these people sounded like after spending so long writing in their voices. And then Christine Lakin performs Kat, and she's so incredible. Like I have to admit, I'm not much of an audiobook person. I honestly find them like soothing, and then I want to take a nap. It's like someone's reading me a story. But I have been listening to this one partway through it, and she is so incredible. Like there have been times when her performance made me cry. I'm like, you wrote this. What is wrong with you? But she just brings so much emotion to it. She's amazing. And then the other real standout for me was Ellis Dean, who's the like gossip blogger character. I had based him very much on Johnny Weir, the former figure skater turned commentator. And when the producer of the audiobook first emailed me, I, like a very normal professional person, wrote back and was like, should I tell you that my delusional author dream is for Johnny Weir to play Ellis? And she was like, oh yeah, I could totally see that he's like a Johnny Weir type. We'll find someone like that. And I was like, great. Okay. And then she decided to just send him an offer and see what happened. And like, I still can't believe he said yes. Listening to him on the audiobook it's such a trip. Like he's the perfect Ellis. Like he sounds exactly like Ellis did in my head, but also I'm like, this is Olympian Johnny Weir. What did I make him say? Oh no.
That's so funny. I didn't even think of it like in that way. When we got the audiobook download, because again, booksellers, we get like lots of special things, which we're very lucky for. But there's an app called Libra FM, which if anybody is looking for an app that supports indie bookstores, that is a way to buy audiobooks and support your local indie. And at the top of every month, publishers tell Libra FM like what books they want to offer to us as advanced listening copies. And so when I saw the favorites on the list and I saw that Johnny Weir was like one of the narrators, I literally like squealed for you. And I was like has to be like dying that this happened.
I'm just so glad, because I feel like the audiobook has been outselling the other formats actually. And I think a lot of it is because it's got this great cast and people want it, like they know Johnny. And so I'm so glad I shared my delusional author dream. I felt like really weird writing that email, but it worked out.
No, it worked out great. That's like both surprising and unsurprising to me, because I think similar to you, like audiobooks tend to be, I rarely can listen to a full book on audio. I've learned that like my method is I can like tandem read of like do a chapter in the car, come home, read it with my eyes, do like a chapter like while I'm like cleaning or like something, but I like rarely can, because I can just read much faster than I can take in audio. And so I realized that like there were books that felt quite slow to me, but it wasn't actually like a pacing issue with the book. It was just like I was listening to it and reading it at a slower pace than I would normally with my eyes. So then something felt off. But I just feel like when you have like a cast of narrators, something is just like a little bit different. Like there's something in that makes it just like a better, different experience. And then when you add, Olympian Johnny Weir into it. I have one last question for you before I go over to our audience Q&A, which they're already dropping some amazing questions in the chat. We will keep it spoiler free, but just one of the things that's pretty fun for St. Louisans is there is like a very pivotal scene set in St. Louis. I'm assuming from what you said earlier that was also like based off of a real competition.
Yep.
So that was probably why you chose to base it in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Nationals in 2006 were in St. Louis at I think it's the Enterprise Center now, but it was the Savvis Center back then. And I'm actually bummed because the hotel that I don't even know if they did this on purpose. I think it was an accident, but the hotel that my publisher had booked me at was the one that they stay in the book. And I was so excited to go. Stupid snow. But yeah, there's a whole one of my favorite kind of sequences of scenes takes place in St. Louis. And that was one where the free dance, the final in the ice dance competition was on Friday the 13th that year. That was something I found through quite the internet rabbit hole. And
that's fine.
Yeah, no spoilers, but things go a certain way for our heroine.
Some things that happen there that, are interesting. We'll keep it. Okay, our first question is for Mary. And Mary's wondering, how was your experience working with Book of the Month? Because that is how Mary found your novel.
Oh, great. Yeah, I love Book of the Month. I've been a subscriber for years and years. And I've discovered so many great books that way. Some of my favorites in the past few years, like Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and Ruthie Thorpe's Margot's Got Money Troubles. And I just think Book of the Month is so great because it's you might take a chance on a book that you wouldn't buy full price in hardcover necessarily. And then often I'll go buy the actual hardcover if I loved it that much in Book of the Month. So you just kind of get an email out of the blue one day and they tell you you're a pick. And then I got to go to New York my launch week and film their virtual book tour podcast that they do, which is super fun. It's like a party. It's all the employees are there and there's a cocktail party, an actual party afterwards. They made a cocktail/mocktail based on the book that had a rose petal in it, which I was like, is this a threat? If you know. But it was wonderful. I mean, they were all just so nice and excited about the book. And the response from readers from Book of the Month has been fantastic. The day they announced it, which was a few days before January 1st, I lost control of my Instagram notifications and have never gotten them back. It is just so many people posting about it. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I really love, you've been doing a fan art Friday, right? Is that what
I've been, because so many people were tagging me and I was like, I cannot keep up with this. So I started doing a roundup on Fridays. And my dog wants to be
I was like, Finn's making an appearance.
He's going to get up in his little comfy chair there. Hey, bud. He's just glad he's not out in the snow.
Yeah, just thrilled to not be. I know we have friends who, one of our booksellers actually just adopted a dog and they had to get a raincoat because she refuses to go on walks because it's too cold and too wet.
He has a coat. He also hates his coat. He's just, he likes to be this typical pit bull. He likes to be on the couch with 3 to 5 blankets.
This is why pit bulls are the best though. They're so sweet. Mm-hmm. Okay, it does also, this is just a comment, but it sounds like if anybody loves the cover of the US edition, it sounds like we need to go look at the UK cover from Goldsboro because
the Goldsboro one. Yeah. So this is the regular UK cover behind me, but Goldsboro did this special edition that is sequin cover, sequin end paper, sequin sprayed edges. It's the this was another thing where it was a delusional author dream. In my very first call with my UK editor, I was like, I would love a book cover with sequins. And they were like, say no more. The most sequins ever on a book. It has to be some world record.
Okay, guys, don't get excited. I'm just doing a cursory search, but anybody watching, don't get too excited. There's currently a button that says notify me when available. So I feel they might have sold out, but it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. There's lots of videos of it on my social media.
I might need to try and get this book somewhere. This book is okay. I'll deal with that loss. Later. It's good to know. So Tiffany is wondering, you said that you created a playlist while listening to Tiffany created a playlist while listening to this novel. What songs were or would be on your playlist?
Well, I have an official playlist that's 100 songs long. That's every song mentioned in the book, plus kind of vibey ones. So that's on my website if anyone wants to check it out. I'm trying to think what, like, besides the songs that are in the book are the most. There's this song called Fuck It, I Love You that is like so cat and Eve that's on there. That's a good one. I think the band is Oh Wonder. But yeah, you should check that out. I also have my own secret playlist that's like 500 songs. That's like everything that has ever given me the slightest favorites vibe. I love listening to music while, not so much while I write, but while I'm like thinking about the book, while I'm
Okay.
like, thinking
Well,
about
you're kind of like formulating it, like figuring out. That makes sense. I'm sticking with the song theme for a second. Trinity would like to know if you knew, did you know you were going to do some emotional damage to us with their final song choice? At the end of chapter 72, I put the headphones on and let the tears fall. I've been reliving it through the song since. I loved it.
Love to hear that. I just love, I mean, I guess it's not really a spoiler. It's like the song is The Last Time by Taylor Swift and Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol. And it's, I think, such an underrated song from her catalog.
I agree.
It's so just like sweeping and emotional and incredible. And I knew I wanted, like, I was trying to put Taylor Swift in the book because I love her. And the right album for that era was Red. So I had like there's the scene where Bella and Kat are skating together, listening to Red. And then when I was trying to think of what their final song would be, I was like, it's got to be something from Red that just feels so right. And then it just had to be The Last Time. Like, it just, the lyrics are so perfect for them. And the whole, like, I don't know. I could just see, this still happens to me. Like, I will hear a song and it's like I can just see Kat and Heath skating to it in my head. And that happened with that song. So
so I'm assuming that one of the questions was, you mentioned Taylor Swift. Are you a Swiftie?
Oh yeah.
Sounds like you are. Yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of crap at the bookstore because there's lots of Swifties that work at the Novel Neighbor. And I'm like, I really love Red as an album. Like, and I think like when Red came out, like it was just like the things that were happening in my life at the time, like it was just like a whole moment for me. So Red has just stayed one of my favorites. So yeah, when that song like played, it just like, it really did something. It did something to me. What other Taylor Swift songs are like some of your favorites, just in general, not even necessarily related to the book?
I love Exile. That would have been in the book if it was like era appropriate.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Song ever. I love Vigilante Shit. That's like the day that album came out, I started getting tagged with so many people being like, this is Scarlett from They Never Learn song, like up to the like Thick as Thieves with Your Ex-Wife. Like, it's everything. So I love that one. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely like a Reputation era girly. Like, if I had to pick, I'm very excited for Reputation, Taylor's version, whenever it will finally
Do you think it'll happen this year?
I want to believe. We all need it. Please.
I feel like we would deserve it at this point. Like, please, could you? It's like one of the only things that I feel like can salvage 2025, maybe. Okay, let's see what other questions. Okay, when writing the various competition scenes, as you describe their movements, did you have a full ice dance routine playing in your head with original choreography? Or did you just take bits and pieces from actual ice dances you watched and pick out specific moves?
Bits and pieces. I'm definitely not a choreographer. I did spend a lot of time watching old programs on YouTube, and I'd pick a move I knew I wanted them to do, and then I would do like a frame by frame on the video to try and figure out how, especially for lifts and stuff, because when you watch it in like real time, it looks like magic. Like, they're on the ice, and then she's up in the air, and then she's down. So I did a lot of trying to figure out like how they actually got into that position and out of it, and then thinking about all the things that could go horribly wrong, of course.
That makes sense. I was like imagining, Katie Robert has talked before about how they use Barbies to do the like sex scenes to make sure.
Smart.
And I was like wondering if you were like taking Barbies and, like,
I wish I had. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, it'd be like a fun project for somebody to do, to like go back to all your scenes and like put the Barbies in order. Okay, Elizabeth is wondering, what was your favorite scene to write?
Probably the one where it's kind of a spoiler, where Heath returns after being away for a while. And he and Kat see each other again. That was one of the first scenes that I wrote, and it stayed pretty consistent throughout. Like I changed the setting of it, and I changed the time, and I changed all this stuff, but like that moment of them seeing each other again, just it felt like the core of the book to me. So I had a lot of fun writing that one, and I'm glad it stayed. It's always special when a scene kind of like the core of it stays the same throughout all the editing.
That's really I did the speaking of that, the first page of the book, like the first line is today is the 10th anniversary of the worst day of my life. Was that always the first line?
No, I tried a lot of different
Okay.
beginnings. And in fact had like a lot of back and forth. So my agent hates prologues, and that's technically a prologue, even though it doesn't say prologue. So we went like
knife in my chest.
several rounds about that. And then, it was funny because I did cut it down a lot. Like that used to be longer, and I cut it down to just the essentials, which I think was the right choice. Like she was absolutely right about that. But she wanted me to cut it entirely and just kind of go into the documentary. And then when they put out the US advanced reader copies, they used that like Kat's stuff from the prologue as like a main design element on the back cover. And I was like, well. Good thing I didn't cut it.
I really am attached to that prologue. So yeah, good thing.
I just felt like we needed to hear from Kat as her like 40-year-old current day self before we saw her as a teenager or heard other people talking about her. I just wanted her to kind of like come out and be like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Like, if you want to hear my story, stick around.
Yeah. It sets the right tone for the rest of the book. I do think it's pretty essential. Okay, Ash is wondering, who is your favorite character?
I mean, Kat for sure. Also, Ellis, he's like such a fan favorite, and he was so fun for me to write. And then I would say Sheila. Like, I love Sheila. She's horrible, and I love her so much. Like, I don't know. She was just fun. I like writing that kind of character who's like this iconic figure that someone else is like idolizing in this way, and then we get to like, peel back the layers. Like she felt like I actually have this Miranda Priestley print behind me, and she felt like that to me, like that kind of character.
That does ring true. Yeah, I'm a huge Meryl Streep is like my favorite actress of all time. So Miranda Priestley was actually somebody that I thought about while I was reading your book, because I do feel
good. Like, yay.
Yeah, it's like definitely the tone that I got. Wow, this is fun. Somebody has just dropped some St. Louis lore that I didn't know about, which is, I think this was a comment that was back on when you were saying that your hotel was going to be the one that they had stayed at while they were at Nationals. And so Jesse commented that George Clooney stayed there when he filmed Up in the Air. Jesse saw him at her father-daughter dance there.
Oh my God.
I didn't even know like Up in the Air was filmed in St. Louis, or that George Clooney was here. That's like really fun St. Louis lore for me.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Okay, Christina's wondering, how was it like signing for Goldsboro? Did you get a call from them?
No, that was another just like email. I feel like so much everything in writer life is just like exciting emails. That's why we're so obsessed with checking our email, because any day you could get one that changes your life. But yeah, I just my UK editor told me about it, and then they sent me the design. They actually sent me 2 designs, and one was, I love the one they went with, I do, but like I'm a goth girl, like I wear all black all the time, and they sent me one that was like kind of grayscale and gold sequins, and I'm like, could you just make one just for me? It was so good. And then when I went over to London last fall to visit my UK publisher, and while I was there, I signed because all the Goldsboro editions are signed, so I like just signed until my hand was gonna fall off. A lot of them just have my first initial and last name, because I was like, I can't do I'm under the gun here. That's the best I can do.
No, it's so fair. Brittany is wondering if you have a favorite pair of skaters you enjoyed watching for research for this book, which I think you talked about Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that like sticks out for you?
Yeah, Tessa and Scott, love them. They're not my favorites. My favorites are Madison Hubble and Zachary Donahue. I am deeply obsessed with them. So they're retired now. Madison's coaching and also is doing these incredible show programs with the French ice dancer Gabriella Papadakis. They just did this world premiere program, the two of them, over last weekend, actually. So everyone should look that up. But Hubble and Donahue, I feel like I need a chart to explain them. So it's like the most romance novel thing. Like they were rivals, skating with other people, hated each other. Then they like broke up with their other partners. Their coaches were like, you two should skate together. And they're like, no, we hate each other. We refuse. So they would make them skate around the rink holding hands, hating each other all the while. Then they decided to team up. Then they started dating. Of course, enemies to lovers. Then they broke up because, and I quote, Zach said their relationship was too explosive to like combine the professional and the personal. So they broke up as like lovers, but kept skating together after that for years, and won a bronze medal in 2022. And they're still like good friends. And it just is the wildest. There was a period in there too after they broke up where they were dating. He was dating the Olivia Smart from the Spanish ice dance team, and Madison was dating Adrian Diaz from the Spanish ice dance team. So they were like dating the other. It's crazy. Like this is where when people are like, I don't know, the drama in The Favorite seems kind of over the top. I'm like, you have no idea. Like I had to tone it down.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have also like a weirdly niche question to ask you, which is, so in full transparency to the people, when we made a video about The Favorites, I meant to say Scott Virtue or Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, and I did say Meryl Davis and Charlie White, which also great. I'm sure that you've watched them, right?
Yes.
And because what I was also thinking is, did you ever watch when Meryl did Dancing with the Stars?
No,
Guys, if you guys have not watched, every so often this like goes around on TikTok, because like Meryl and Charlie, so great, lovely. Meryl then went on Dancing with the Stars and got paired with Maxim Smirkovsky, who is now married, and like it's a whole, like obviously this is a whole different thing, but he was like the notorious bad boy of Dancing with the Stars back in like, well, dancing. I feel like Alana Meyer kind of brought Dancing with the Stars back, but this was like peak Dancing with the Stars to me, and Meryl, he was clearly like in love with Meryl, and they were doing these like amazing routines in the ballroom, and people were like, they are in love. And we never got any confirmation if they ever dated or not, but it's a very like, if you ever want some fun videos that are not ice dancing, go back and watch some old Dancing with the Stars videos of these two.
Yeah, that is a rabbit hole I would love to go down.
I was just thank you. Like, guys, it's really, go down it and come talk to me. It was really, which is what I was thinking of when I accidentally said it in the video, because I was like, just that day earlier, I started to get fed like new TikToks of like people reliving this, which again, Maxim is now happily married to another Dancing with the Stars professional. I think Meryl is like happily partnered off with somebody else, if not married, but it was really great. Okay, a lot of people want to know if there's any sense of whether they could possibly get a movie or a show about The Favorites.
I can say it has been optioned for TV, which I think it'd be hard to pack all this into a movie. So I'm glad it's TV. There's a showrunner attached, which is like a big hurdle in Hollywood, but we're at the point where they're going to start like pitching it to buyers in the next. Like everything's crazy in Hollywood right now after the wildfires. Like they're still, business is not as usual over there. So I don't have any timeline, and everything in Hollywood is such a crapshoot, but there's a really great team working on it. So fingers crossed.
That would be like, I'm like both. That would be so exciting and nerve-wracking, because I always feel nervous when like one of my favorite books is getting turned in to something, which I'm sure as an author is like an even more familiar feeling. Yeah. It's your baby being turned into something. But
the people working on it, like it could not be better. I trust them so much. So if it does happen, it'll be an amazing adaptation, I think.
Mary's wondering if you can tell us anything about what you're working on next.
Sure. So my next book, the working title is The Vamp, and it is about a Broadway musical. So sort of going back and forth in time between the original production in the 90s and a revival that's happening in 2021, 2022, like right as Broadway is reopening after the pandemic. and focuses on 3 different women who are involved in those productions in various ways. And I can say the musical within the book is about a female vampire and a hot priest and their forbidden love. So I'm very excited about writing the like musical within the I'm gonna write some lyrics. They'll probably be bad, but you know.
I think you just broke me. Like, right? Okay, speaking of vampires, have you seen Nosferatu?
Yes.
What did you think?
Um, it wasn't like my favorite, but I definitely enjoyed it. I want to know why they keep insisting on making Bill Skarsgård not hot, because he's like extremely hot and they keep making him not hot, and I'm like, come on. But
Okay,
Nicole was great. Lily Rose Depp was great. Yeah.
we went to see it like a few days after Christmas, and my husband was just like cracking up because I was like, okay, I understand that this is like, I guess I was just like in hot vampire mode. And so it was like, I really just thought like at some point he would get hot again. Or like we'd have like he's just not hot like the entire time. And I thought that the point of having Bill Skarsgård play this would be that at some point in time he would be very
Um,
attractive. So it really unsettled
yeah,
me.
I mean, if you want to see him play a hot vampire, you have to watch Hemlock Grove, which is one of the worst shows ever, but he is very hot on it. Which is why I watched all 3 seasons despite hating it, because he is so, so hot.
So that makes sense to me. Are you in writing this book? Are you having to go down like deep vampire like lore, or is that like are you like really in on the vampires right now?
Somewhat. I feel like I know like a lot about vampire lore already. Like I've been preparing for this my whole life. I think my research has more been Broadway stuff. I've been using it
Okay.
as an excuse to just go see a lot of Broadway shows. Like, I was in New York a bunch of times last year and saw all kinds of things. And I'm like, it's tax deductible research. This is great.
What is like one of your favorite Broadway shows that you've seen?
Recently, Sunset Boulevard, the revival that they're doing right now, is incredible. Like one of the best experiences I've had. And then I got to see Mary Louise Roll Along with Jonathan Groff and Daniel Radcliffe and Lindsay Mendez twice, which was like I saw it once, and then I was back in New York with my mom for like our birthdays are close together, so we took a trip, and I
Okay.
was just like, we're going again. Like you need to see this too.
Oh, I am so jealous. Yeah, mm, that's really that's great. Um, okay, final call for any questions. If we didn't get to them, I'm gonna recheck the chat to make sure. Oh, Trinity's wondering if there are any other special editions coming out that you know about. Mostly people want as many copies of this book as they can purchase.
I will say, so we're starting to plan the paperback release, which we should be announcing fairly soon. And there's going to be a lot of like special kind of bonus feature stuff in the paperback. We're working on some things.
That would be so great. Okay, well, in case if you're wondering if people are excited about your next book, the comments are filling up with sold, say no more. So the people are with you. We're ready for
Yay!
it. You are. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for such an incredible night. If you were registered for this event, you should have already gotten an email from us saying this, but just in case you didn't get to read that yet, or if you came across this just like randomly and didn't get our email, Layne was kind enough to send us book plates and bookmarks after the first time we had to schedule. So we do have some of those left. So if you ordered your copy of the favorites when you registered, we have that book ready for you at the bookstore, and we also are automatically putting book plates and bookmarks in it. But another question that we got asked is like, if you had already picked up your copy from the Novel Neighbor, could you still qualify for that? And absolutely, like we will totally set that up with you. So you can just email the store either at our hello@thenovelneighbor.com email address, or you can email me if you did get that. If you email hello, it'll get to me either way. But if you got our email about the rescheduling of the event to to a virtual event this evening, then you can just respond to that email and let us know that you're interested in picking up one of those book plates and bookmarks. And Layne has promised that if we don't have enough to go around, we will get more. So everyone will get
I have plenty.
yeah, everybody will get something, no matter what. So we're so appreciative of everybody's adaptability and flexibility in this. And Layne, we're so excited that you could tune in from Chicago still. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
This was so fun, and I am going to get to St. Louis one of these days. I am planning to come for nationals next January. I'm very excited about that. I missed nationals this past year because it was my partner's 40th birthday. I was like, how dare you? First of all, but it's in St. Louis next year. It's an Olympic year, so hopefully I'll be there and we can plan something fun.
Yes, that's our goal. So stay posted. Next January snow better be way chiller. We're not letting it ruin this again. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Bye, everybody.